this. This is the advance, right? Hi, I'm Margaret Montgomery, and I am the Sustainable Design Leader at NBBJ, which is one of those acronyms. Originally stood for Naramore, Bain, Brady, and Johansson, just so you know the names. We are a large global architecture and design firm, and we work in a number of different sectors, from healthcare to sports to higher education to civic to corporate and commercial work. And in all of those areas, human experience is very, very important to us as a firm, and it's a real privilege to be here and be part of this conversation. When I was approaching this, what I did was I collected several examples of different ways that we have interacted with research that I thought would maybe just give a flavor of some of the different ways that translation happens in an actual design firm. Let's see, where does it go? Advance? Oh, got it. Okay, so in this process of designing buildings, there are two sort of different sectors here going on. There's what happens to the people, as we talked about earlier. There are the buildings themselves, and then there are the humans within the buildings. And both of those are equally important because what we do with the buildings affects the humans in such a huge way. And the buildings themselves are what we traditionally think of as the architecture realm, which include things like cost and sustainability and the operating costs and the systems and the infrastructure and the things that we put together that get built. The humans are, you can tell whether you're doing well. If you're looking for health and well-being, you're looking for the collaboration capabilities, you're looking for the way people are able to exist and operate and thrive within those built environments that we create. So within that, there's research in both of those areas that we try to apply in the best way possible. Granted, in some areas, as we've talked about all day long, some are more quantifiable than others, and some are more accessible than others, which is why this day has been such a wonderful opportunity, and I know that it's going to continue. So we tend to take the research that we find in those different areas and put it into our design process. And at this point in time, we have a much greater sort of a design computation capability that we have in past years, so that we're able to occasionally, you know, depending on what the factor is that we're looking at, create a computational algorithm that helps us to solve for, you know, a bunch of options and optimize for the best option for certain things. And all with the goal of creating a high-performance building where the building itself performs in the best way possible and the humans within it also do the same. And for some clients, the best outcome of that is an innovative company. For other clients, there are different outcomes, but all related to the highest and best functioning of the humans within the space. So here's an example of an academic partnership with practice. This Targeting 100 is a project that actually had its roots in a little ad hoc thing that we did inside our firm called the Sustainable Healthcare Energy Challenge, or SHEC, which is kind of a silly name. When the 2030 Challenge for Design, it's probably something that most of you don't know about. It was the goal of saying that if no one else is working on climate change, we can work on it with the goal of reducing the fossil fuel energy use in buildings to zero by 2030 in these incremental steps. So we were looking really hard at, wow, we've got about half of our work is healthcare. How are we going to do that? Healthcare is very regulation driven, so it's a challenge. So what we did was we pulled together a multidisciplinary group, kind of, you know, in our free time as an ad hoc thing. And we were fortunate that that coincided also with the beginning of a partnership that we were able to participate in with a group called Better Bricks, which is a group funded by the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, which is a utility program looking towards greater energy efficiency. So they partnered with design firms, of which we were one, and so we were working with the Integrated Design Lab at the University of Washington in that partnership, and were able to take that much further than we would have on an ad hoc basis because they took it on as part of their call to work on the sector's efficiency. And it was so successful that, in fact, then once the outcomes came out for our Northwest example of how do you get 60% of the energy use out of a hospital, they wrote a grant application to the Department of Energy and got a $1.2 million grant to expand that to a national study, and which was an amazing thing. You can find it now on their website to see how this applied to all these different climate zones. One of the translational pieces that I think was really successful about that is when that went national, the research team devised a series of focus group sessions in the 6 cities nationally where it was being tweaked for different climate zones, and they went around a couple of different times to the industry professionals in that area to really review the information they were working on, get feedback, understand what the difficulties and the challenges were in that place, and really get the feedback from the people on the ground trying to implement this in practice. So I think that's a potentially good model that could be considered more often. So, yeah. Okay, so here's another one that was purely internal. This was purely project research. After Katrina, we were working on a new medical center for the VA in New Orleans. So part of that project was, because we have a research team in-house, they conducted dozens and dozens of focus group sessions with the veterans that were going to be served by this medical center, which was incredibly insightful, and they discovered a lot of things that are, many things which are generic to humans, a number of things that are very specific to veterans, and especially veterans of wartime, and the experiences that they've had of life, and then even some things that are very specific to the veterans who were coming home to southeast Louisiana, who had probably been in that location for all of their lives. So it was pretty interesting, and they, at the end of it, they put together this book that's about an inch thick, which I found really valuable. And the insights that they found, so for this one, actually, it's really important to know exactly where you are. For your mental health, you can't get lost, right? So the translational diagram was into this concourse of the corridor, the concourse, the main concourse between all of the wings in the hospital. You cannot get lost. And then after that informed the design process, there was the outcome. So it's a great translation of some specific research. We have a research fellowship that we have just instituted this year. John Medina has spent his career thinking about brain science and how that affects the way we process information. So he's spending the year this year interacting with us in a really interesting way. A lot of it has been him imparting what he knows about brain science and admitting that he knows very little about the built environment. But we're hoping that between what he knows and what we know and the questions that we can ask each other, that we're going to find some really interesting things that we can apply to design and to the outcomes there. And then finally, this, the way that is the most common for us is that we gather in all of the research that we find out there and apply it in the best way that we have. And that's where, having more of it available is incredibly helpful. We don't usually have the liberty to do the research on the projects or in a timely way to respond to a particular project, but we can learn on an ongoing basis things that over time, iteration after iteration will apply and begin to change the design in ways that we hope are very, very positive. So I think I'm the last of the last.